Hello everyone. We're not quite on to actual dovetails yet, but in this video I'm going to be showing you how to cut a dovetail T-halving joint. Absolutely rock solid of a joint and quite a fun variation to make on your traditional halving joint. So, let's go. Okay, so if you haven't already, be sure to watch my last video I did on how to cut a corner halving joint. Link is up here, because this joint starts from a point that was covered in the last video and there's no point me going over it again because many of you are going to be watching this as a series and it would get quite repetitive otherwise. So anyway, in close, let's see how to mark this thing out. Before going anywhere with this, tools you're going to need for this joint are crosscut saw, rip saw, sliding bevel, a pen or pencil, a marking gauge, a marking knife, a square and a ruler. So firstly, we are going to mark out the dovetail. Right, so firstly, obviously we've got to focus on the face side, so I've already drawn this one on here. That's going that way, and then I've got one on this opposite component going this way. So they're going to go together like this, and that way when I look at the joints, I know that this face side and this face edge is looking at my face. So there we go, I'm going to see those. And this one here, obviously that face side could go either way. There's no particular outside face for that. The way I've done it is so that the flick on this face side and the flick on that face side is going the same way. I was going to say it's like a heart, but it's really not, is it? Ignore that. They're flicking the same way. So, thing to note here, I said that the preparation of this joint is very similar to a corner halving joint, which it is. The only difference you got to do is you have to square that shoulder line all the way around on all four faces on here. So again, when you're doing that, make sure that you're referencing it off that face side all times. And when it comes to squaring this one across, you're squaring it off your face edge. Do not do it off the other one because that will mean that it's not accurate. So that is squared round on all four sides. And now we can start marking out the dovetail. Now, dovetail ratios, I kind of follow them, but I don't get too anal about it, to be honest. I just think if that looks roughly about right, which it does, that'll do for me. So what I'm going to do is get this sliding bevel right on the corner there. And then I'm simply just going to mark that down to the shoulder line. Need a new Jesus pen soon. This one's not working. Aha, there we go. Right, so there we go. There is our dovetail joint. And we can see that that is going to go on like this. So first things to do, we need to cut this out obviously, so to the vise. Now if you're new to sawing, it will be difficult to start the saw right on the corner here and follow that line. So I would suggest maybe insetting that line a couple of millimeters so then you have a proper flat surface to get started on. For me, I'm going to start it right on the edge. So this is a tenon saw. It's obviously quite overkill for this, but my dovetail saw doesn't have the required depth to be able to cut this joint. So there we go, that is engaged now. Now while I'm doing this, if you haven't already, be sure to watch my video on how to saw correctly because this will give you a lot of guidance for this process and it will make it a lot easier for you. So here we go, approaching that shoulder line now. Just gonna slow down as I get to the bottom. There we go, so that one's done. There we go, so dovetail is cut out now. Let's just get rid of these extra bits on the corners. So we'll get our cross-cut saw for this. And I've got my shoulder line drawn on there, so just nibble that away from the back, level the saw out straight through, and just be careful not to cut into the side of the dovetail, obviously. Nibble out the back, level the saw out. Voila. There we go. So there's our dovetail, pretty much all cut out. So we just got to clean up the shoulder lines now. So nice sharp chisel in here, and this is why it's important that you square this line round all the way, because it means that we can locate that right in the bottom there. And then simply just push it through. And again, you don't want to be taking this in one chop because you're just going to end up sinking the chisel deeper than you want to. So just take out small amounts at a time. There we go, that's looking pretty good. Just got to clean out that last bit there. So that shoulder's all good now. Let's just flip it around. There we go, it's all looking good. And once you've come in from the sides like that, make sure that you double check these front edges here, that you haven't dipped below that line because obviously that's going to be a show face there. What you will see on this very front edge and around the entire perimeter actually is a very, very small white line, and that's actually your initial knife line going all the way around. And obviously the bit behind that is where you've chiseled. So as soon as you see that white line around the outside, you know that you've gone down far enough and that you are spot on that knife line, so don't go any deeper than that. So there we go, dovetail all cut out. Now let's get it cut out into this. So face side is up on here. face side is up on here. Don't be tempted to cut into your face side, because obviously that would mean your face side's up on here and your face side's down on here. Keep track of them. Remember, they went up this way in the shape that wasn't a heart, so we want to be doing that. So flip it over like this, and we're going to trace around this with a knife. What you can do at this point is get yourself a clamp. So I'm just going to lock it in place with my hands, get one of these quick release clamps. So now I can just get the knife in there, do a very light cut to start with, and then I'll increase that pressure to start digging in. There we go. And again on this side, just get that line established. There we go. Take that off, and we have our dovetail mark there. And obviously this is the waste material. So next thing we've got to do is get our marking gauge, and we've got to establish how deep we want to go. So again, if you watched the previous video, you'll know that we referenced this marking gauge off of our face side here. So because the dovetail's on this side, it's easy to think, I'll reference off that side. No, you want to reference it off your face side still. So mark that all the way along there. And obviously now you have your dovetail marks, you can see roughly how far you need to go with this marking gauge, so you don't end up putting massive lines in the edge of your timber. There we go. So that's all done, and we're just going to square those lines down now. So again, referencing from our face side. Where's my knife? There we go. So in fact, I'll spin this round so you can actually see. So still referencing off the face side here. I'm going to get my knife into where that dovetail ended. There we go. Slide the square up, drag back. There we go. Square that line down, and this one as well. Drag back. Those lines are established. Now this one here. There we go. Right, and again, just mark my waist so I know what I'm removing. There we go. So let's get cutting this thing out now. So similar to the corner halving joint, I'm not going to cut directly to these lines because I like to chisel down to them and get that nice pristine mark on there. So I'm going to get my crosscut carcass saw for this. If you're at any point confused about the saws that I'm using in terms of the terminology and sizes and things like that, I did a video on what saws do you need, so I'll put the link up here for that. And that'll give you a good overview of what saws you need, obviously, and what the differences between them are and how to find the one that's going to suit your work the best. I'd very much recommend watching that before seeing the rest of this series, because it'll give you a much better understanding of what's going on here. So you might see I'm starting at the back edge here and then leveling my saw out. And if you watch my video on how to saw correctly, and again, knowing the things in that video, it will give you a much better chance of being able to cut these accurately. So I'm just approaching that baseline now, so I'm just going to take small cuts here and there just to make sure that I don't go below it. Right, so there's our two outer cuts done. They're about 1 millimeter away from our knife line. And what I'm going to do now is just do a few more cuts in the middle, just to weaken this material here so we can whack it out with a chisel. Okay, now let's get the bulk of this material out. So just get it in the vise like that. Don't need to be too precious with this, just whack it out and get rid of most of it. Okay, there we go, so most of that is coming out now. Let's just do a little bit more clear up bit going this way into it. There we go, same as the T-halving joint, we're just going to sort of skim over that with a chisel and get rid of bulk and material. So just pressure on top, skim it through. There we go, that has hit most of the high points. So you can carry that on with a chisel, just keep going down to those baselines you got there, stick a ruler in there, and then just find any peaks in the middle and then mark those with your Jesus pen, and then that will give you a nice flat bottom for you to glue to. I'm going to show you the method with the router plane, so over this side now. Okay, so it's jobs like this that the router plane is obviously going to excel, because it can reference off these two surfaces and skim that through. A shoulder plane you could still use for something like this, but it's just going to be a little bit more difficult to see into that joint. So router plane is really good here. So I'm going to bring the blade up, so we're taking off the peaks to start with. So skim that through, and we're just going to keep lowering this blade until I eventually hit that baseline. That is pretty much at the baseline. What I might do is just that little trick where I just loosen this, tighten it again, and just let that blade naturally drop a bit. There we go. Taking out one final pass all the way around. There we go. I reckon that's pretty spot on the bottom now. So now, all we've got to do is trim back to these lines that we've drawn on here to allow this to be properly mortised in. So we're going to get our chisel for that. Oh, I shouldn't have thrown it around like that. Bad practice. And because there's 1 millimeter left, like I said previously, what we're going to do is remove half of that to start with, and just see vertical and whack it through. So I'm going to do that all the way along, take it back an equal distance. So now it's all completely cleared out on there. We started off 0.5mm away from the shoulder lines, and then we did the final chopping all the way down with a chisel, and now it's looking nice and uniform all the way along the edges. Looks like there's a small step there, which I'm just going to slightly pare out. There it is. Cool. So that is all good. Now we've just got to clean out these corners. So because this joint is very tight fitting, we do want to make sure we get it as perfect as possible first time. So we're just going to make sure none of these little niggly bits are in the corners here that are going to prevent it from bottoming out. Take out that last remaining bit. There we go. So before whacking this together, we're just going to do a few checks on it. Firstly, check it with a ruler all the way along, just to make sure that there's no points here where it's sort of dropping off like it did in the previous video. We're going to make sure that that is all nice and crisp on there, which it is. All I've got on there is half the V point left by the marking knife, but we can plane that out afterwards. It's a very, very small mark. So that's all good. And again on this one, if this was prepared with as much precision as it was in the previous video, this will be perfectly fine. So to make this a little bit easier to fit in, all I'm going to do is put a small chamfer on the underside here. When you do this, choke up on the chisel like this, your hands there's a bit of meat there. So we're just going to get the chisel on here, and don't start right from this outside corner because you're going to see it. Just start from here and then pare through. So just a very small amount. This will just help it locate into the housing we have here. So that's looking all good. Just going to remove those last bits from in there. There we go. Right. Whack it in. It's a good old fit. Bloody hell, this workshop echoes. Well, that ain't going anywhere. That is in there pretty rock solid, so I don't even think that needs glue. Let's just give it a plane. So coming in from the outside in, so we don't cause any breakout on this outside edge. Just gonna skim this through. Already looking pretty good on there. Just got a little bit of a shoulder line left to get rid of. Skim that through. Cool, right, just do the end now, so get that all cramped up right like that. Beautiful, right, I think that is pretty much there. And there we go, that is how you cut a dovetail T-halving joint. Now obviously my videos are quite heavily edited, so it'd be quite easy for me to just cut the camera, glue it up and then not tell you. But to prove that you can get a joint this well fitted without glue, I will show you that now, providing I can actually get it out. No glue whatsoever. So you saw the result left over from that. That is what you can achieve with precision marking out, precision using of tools, precision use of tools. And yeah, just take your time with it and you will get a creaky fit like that, and it will just be, I mean, imagine that with glue in it and clamps. That is just going to be amazing. So there we go. Hope that helped, and I'll see you in the next one.